Hey, welcome into another edition of the Men's Mental Health Pod right here on Disrupt the Media. I'm Lance Taylor with Dr. Bhrett McCabe, Kick Anxiety's Ass, BhrettMcCabe.com. This episode, we've got a special guest coming up on the tail end, a name that everybody will recognize, and we're going to talk a little shame and embarrassment, I guess feelings that a lot of us have gone through after suffering. I never forget my first episode in Indianapolis. I told you this. After that 24-plus hour ordeal, which was awful, we get back to Birmingham in the parking lot. Dunaway and Brown are we're all getting out of that Johnston RV we took up there to Indianapolis. And the first thing I told them, please don't tell anybody about this. Like, I was so embarrassed. And now I'm embarrassed that I was embarrassed, if that makes any sense, because I think it's so important to actually be able to share with people.
We all want to be Superman. You know what I always say about the shame and embarrassment thing? We all been raised to think to be like Superman, right? Superman's got it all together. Clark Kent, perfect hair. You wanted to be an actor. We all got to think like Batman. Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, 3 greatest movies ever done about psychology.
Interesting.
Bruce Wayne, no superpower. He had to face his fears of being in a well with the bats. He named himself that. He had a mission. And he used his tools every day to go for a cause. But he fought doubts and fear and shame. He felt like he shouldn't have to do that.
So do you suggest people fight their fears? Like, example, if you're
like
scared to fly.
You got to do it eventually. Exposure is the greatest thing over it. But we can't, it's kind of like, do we throw you in the deep end and teach you how to swim? Maybe a pretty terrifying experience. Right. So I think there's 2 ways to face fear. One is we do, immediate exposure, or we do what we call graduated exposure, just over time. But talk about shame and the fears. See, that inner world. How many external things do we need to put in place to be happy? Think about it. You probably, if you look back 10 years ago, or when you guys started this, like, man, if we would be at this point right now, I'd be happy.
Right.
How many times have we told ourselves that story?
Well, it's like, when you first get a job, I'll never forget the first job I got in radio. I was working at Radio Disney, and the honest to God truth, I made $12,000 my first year. I made $1,000 a month. This is in 1997. I get a job at Jocks in 98. I make $18,000. And I told myself, if I can ever make $100,000, that's all I ever need in my life.
Yeah.
And that ladder just continues to climb. And you probably know this number, or maybe you don't, but I've always heard there's a certain number that you can't really exceed happiness making more than that number. You kind of have a top-out number.
Yeah, so I think Clay Travis has done a lot of writing on this. It showed that people, about 85,000 is where people cross the threshold of not living paycheck to paycheck of basic human needs. Yeah. It doesn't mean we don't have the newest iPhone and the biggest car. We make those choices. We're talking the basic human needs. It may be less than that, but then there's like $250,000 where it's not exponentially happier. And I think there's some truth to that. So, we talk about shame. It's like, why should I feel this way? Should statements. I shouldn't be unhappy. I shouldn't be sad. We need to not should on ourselves. And should is a shame-based approach.
Be a good T-shirt. Don't should on yourself.
Well, it's an old psychological terminology from one of the best ever, a guy by the name of Albert Ellis, that the other one is don't masturbate. Because you'll never forget it, right?
I've never heard of these.
Exactly. So, but should is an automatic shame-based driven. I should have done better. Okay. So, you have a dear friend who's going through a problem that we know about, and he talks about how, I've got good kids, family, life, job. I've got good family, wife, job.
How often do you hear that?
All the time.
Yeah. Because
I never hear, I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I hear the opposite. It's almost like, I've got everything going for me. Why am I still unhappy?
Yeah. That was my question. Like, it didn't make any sense.
None.
Like, to me, the most important thing, and these go side and side or hand in hand now, is like your physical health and your mental health. Mm-hmm. But, at that point, I was like, physically healthy, got great kids, great ex-wife, girlfriend, job, like everything lines up, but I'm miserable inside. Mm-hmm. And that's baffling for people, especially if you've never experienced it. It kind of hits overnight.
So the battle is always like, how much does the external validators we have in our life, the external reinforcement, like, oh, I got a great car. Okay. How long does that last for?
Right.
I went to a great vacation. You dreamt of going to this vacation. You get there and you're like, I got to go back to work next week. And it's really an inside game that we have to play. We don't spend enough time. So from an inside game perspective, think about this. How many times have you heard that people who have mental health issues, maybe grown up, it was a lack of willpower, mental toughness, focus? It's one of the biggest myths there is.
And that's probably going back to most men not wanting to admit that they're having an issue or a problem.
So let's go back 25 years ago, 30 years ago to men. Men had more, we called them type A personalities, hypertension, stressed. You go into a business room, they have bourbon and whiskey on the table. They're drinking multiple whiskeys a day. They're smoking. They're not exercising. And yet they were 50 and they look like they're 75. And so for so long, we masked it. We really did. We masked it. We put on this veil that, and so I think shame runs with that. It's like, I shouldn't be vulnerable. I shouldn't be weak. I shouldn't be, because I'm the tough warrior. I'm the male-dominated mindset is I go out and hunt and gather, and I am the strong person. And it's like, yeah, when you're 18 to 24 and you're chasing every skirt possible and trying to get everything you can, yeah, there's that. But eventually it starts to break down, right?
Yeah, that's, the whole shame in it. And I would, do you have percentages of people that experience shame that are going through this?
I'd say it's 100%.
100%.
I think what's helped is that we talked about this in a previous episode about people who have almost like a label connection. Like, oh, yeah, man, I got that diagnosis too. I think we've kind of swung the paradigm a little bit, but I think from a shame standpoint. So I'll give you an example. So the Olympics just happened. We know that there is a significant post-Olympic depression that happens for most athletes. And you hear it in the running world. I'm not in the running world, but you hear the running world, post-marathon depressions.
Well, I'm sure you trained for that long for this 1-2 week event or whatever
and it's special. It's wild.
Yeah, and then it's gone, and then you've got this void. Like,
and what else are you going back
purpose?
To? And what are you going back to?
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, I love these events, but who's going to go do BMX in the park and have everybody cheering for you? They're going to be like, kid, get out of the way.
Yeah, right.
Or we watch swimming. We're fascinated by these guys, and they're calling Caleb Dressel is dealing with depression and comes back to swim in this Olympics and win a gold medal. It's so common, and you see it, guys. And since we're talking about men leaving the military, my dad obviously had struggles when he left the military. There are other people who do that, and we leave. Men, I just want to retire. How long can a man stay retired? If you won the lottery right now, the Powerball, you drove over to Atlanta and won the lottery, could you actually retire?
Like cold turkey. Maybe.
How long?
At least I believe it. I don't know. Like, I would want to do something. I would want to have a purpose.
Why?
And is this one of the reasons that you hear coaches say, like Bobby Bowden's like, I know when I retire, I'm not going to have long left. And it does seem like a lot of these guys drop dead a couple of years after retirement.
Coach Saban's a perfect example. Coach Saban has gone on to other things. He said very clearly, I want to fix college football. I want to do ESPN stuff. Wants to play some golf, but he can't play golf for maybe he could, but he really can't play golf forever. He's got to move into the next thing. And he looks giddy doing his new gig. He's happy, right? And there's a burden, and we all have that. So there's this thing that we always looked at as like, men, I just want to retire. And so how long can you retire? I want to go fishing every day. How long can you go fishing every day? Because all those are externals. Ultimately inside, what's the internal thing? And I think that's where faith does come in a lot for a lot of people. I think having self-discovery comes in for a lot of people. I mean, how many times have you met somebody at a later stage of their life and they're nothing like they were early in their life? And they may be granola now, but it's because they found harmony with themselves. I think that's critical, and I think it's understanding those differences. And I think that's why we study so much in sports, retirements. But shame, huge.
Well, I can't, and this was more so before I started to experience what I experienced a few years ago, but when I would hear somebody had committed suicide, my first question was why? Mm-hmm. And then I would think to myself, I never saw any signs. And then you would hear from people in that inner circle, they didn't really have any signs. And I'm just wondering, from your professional experience, are most suicide, actually people that go through with it, is it something they've never talked about before for the majority of it? If that makes any sense.
It does. Knock on wood. But you can usually see the signs after the fact. But the sign alone does not predict. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
you can see somebody really struggling, but they might not even be close to
Okay, let's go back
suicide,
to last
right?
episode, Danny Zoll. I mean, here I am as a teammate. I'm 18 years old. I'm in this environment. Here's a kid who's self-destructing every step of the way, and I didn't see it. I was blown away. I mean, I was almost naive to think that somebody would get kicked off for pot. I mean, we needed him. Like, fix that. Don't do that. You know?
Well, you being an ex-pitcher, Donnie Moore. Do you remember the name?
Oh,
of
yeah,
Moore?
Donnie Moore.
Yeah, so I remember watching the game, Red Sox Angels. He gives up a bomb. I don't know if it was extra innings, bottom of the ninth, whatever.
Right?
In the playoffs, they walk it off against Donnie Moore, the reliever, and he ends up killing himself a couple of years later. And everybody said it was from that moment. So there can be one traumatic moment, whether it's career, relationship, whatever it is, that actually it spawns everything.
So you take a look at the military and PTSD. What predicts PTSD? Don't know. I mean, there may be some newer research than I'm not in the PTSD world.
So it could be a sight, sound.
It could be a sight, sound, smell. A flashbulb moment is what we call it, where it's like this, like when you're in almost in a car accident, you can see the other person's eyes and you just can't let that go. But we can't predict who will have PTSD and not. And some people can have the exact same experience, and some people are completely fine. Some bury it for a long time, and then it comes up later. It's the same for traumatic events, right? Donnie Moore, the pitcher, I mean, is a great reference there. That's 1986.
Yeah.
Okay. So, a change. But yet Bill Buckner at the same time lets a ground ball go through his legs, and he dealt with a lot of shame and embarrassment, but then turned it. Chris Webber calling timeout, he turned it into a foundation.
Scott Norwood.
There's a lot of those that they turn it but we also see the Olympics, and people have massive fails, and we're built for the triumphs. And so there's the shame, there's the embarrassment, and yet there's never a guarantee. So Donnie Moore is that one moment. One thing to know is that mental health is not an all or nothing, not black or white, 100% or 0%. We move within a continuum. And so somebody like Donnie Moore may have had shame, may have had an underlying condition of depression, maybe not a strong family support system, maybe used substances, or couldn't deal with the shame of who he was and never could find value again. That's some of it. That's the inside game. Can we be comfortable with who we are? But I think we have sold a bill of goods for so long that who we are should be this special thing. You go sit at a graduation and everyone's like, you can be whatever you want to be. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can't be everything you want to be. Because if that was the case, then I am an utter failure. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I'm not.
You came, closer than most, though.
Well, I played college.
Yeah, well, you played LSU.
Okay, but I didn't reach my goal. But how many people actually do? So when we tell people you can be whatever you want to be, we have to do it within pause. I like to say you will become who you're destined to be. If it wasn't for me playing baseball, if it wasn't for me getting injured, and it wasn't for me fighting back, I would never be a psychologist. I would no chance in hell I was ever going to be a psychologist. I went to my first class, made a D in psychology until I got mono, and thankfully I could retake the final exam.
How much has it helped you in your profession struggling yourself?
It's a lot.
Giving you that perspective?
You're trained as a psychologist to not self-disclose. And I'm like, that's a bunch of crap. I tell people all the time, this is what I've struggled with. Because if we talk about shame, you walk in the office and you're like, I feel bad. Look, I go see a local psychologist. And that's hard as a colleague. I don't mean this in a bad way. I think people kind of know who I am because of where I work and what I do as a psychologist. People recognize and they know who I am because of supposedly some things I do. And so here I was calling this lady and saying, hey, I'd like to come in and make an appointment with you. And I'm sitting in there and I'm like, hey, I'd like to have these conversations. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, crap, I shouldn't be feeling this way, right? I do very well. I'm around the best of the world at what they do. It's like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, God, I'm struggling with this. And so shame. There's our man.
There he is.
So I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah, okay. Jalen Milroe now joins us. Jalen, can you hear us okay? Me and Dr. Bhrett McCabe.
What's up?
He's got the Lank hat on. I mean, that's the thing. And look, and I'm going to let Dr. McCabe jump in here because I know you guys got a relationship. Obviously, you were one of our NIL guys last year. But when you see that infectious smile, you've got everything in the world. You're quarterback in one of the great brands in all of college football in Alabama. You've got NIL money. You've got the NFL in your future. Good-looking kid. But you were struggling. And I've got the quote. There was a moment in college, this is from you a couple of weeks ago, when I went through some real dark times, true adversity that I had never felt before. Just take me back. When did that start? And when did you finally recognize you were really having a problem?
I'll say initially when I came to college, you're in a different space. You know, you're around a lot of great talent. When you look at leadership-wise, you're with the greatest coach in all college football, and so they demand excellence. And through your process, everybody's process is different when they go on this journey. And through that, you know, you have hardship, you have adversity, and it's all about working through those times and trying to figure out, you know, how can you get through those times. But there's also a point where you can go through hardship and don't know how to work yourself out of it. And I'll say past experiences throughout my time in college were tough in a sense of doubt, hatred, feeling as though, you know, you're trying to like work through situations, stuff like that. You're trying to give your best you. And then also just feeling like, you know, your best foot forward wasn't good enough in a sense. And so I'll say, you know, it started, you know, early on in college, but then, you know, while you're playing, I'll say like quarterback is a tough position because you have to be mentally tough. There's a situation that you go in where you have to be mentally strong, and also your energy influences the guys around you. So that's the position where you have to be calm, cool, and collected. Every approach that you have. So if your teammates see that you're struggling, it's going to wear off on them. And so it's all about being the same guy each and every day and having a positive mindset in a sense. So, you know, when it's time to take your hair down in a sense, that's when you like talk to family or off the field, you know, build a relationship with someone you can trust with your word. And so Bhrett McCabe, you know, he was a key resource for me last year because, you know, that's someone I can reflect on and build off of. Number one was trust, you know, trust and respect with him because, you know, I know that I don't believe in the word self-made. I don't believe in self-made at all. I believe it takes a family, it takes a team to uplift you on your journey to put you in position to be successful and put you in position wherever you want to be at. But you have to acknowledge that you need help. You got to acknowledge that, you know, you're dealing with something. You got to acknowledge that, you know, you're willing to talk to somebody else, you know, and that's a hard social norm for us men in society because we're always told to, you know, not show your emotions, be strong, not show that you're affected, you know, all the you know, the terms that are all out there, but yet who's gonna check up on us when we're you know going through something, you know, and so that's you know a different approach, you know, when it came to dealing with adversity is understanding it and acknowledging it. You know, I just you know quickly talk about my background, and I have a family, I have a military background, dad military, mom Navy, and structure, discipline, detail oriented. Everything they were approached, you know, I use like the bobblehead analogy. That's how it was with my parents. So yes, no. That was simply that was exactly what it was. Jalen, how was your day? Good. You know what I'm saying? So, like it was strictly that. So you know, I remember, you know, just a quick story when I was going through some time in college and that was a difficult time. And, you know, I told my dad, like, you know, this, you know, something that bothered me. He didn't know how to take it. I always been a bobblehead in the sense of just yes, no, didn't really, you know, show my emotion or tell my emotions. I just, you know, saw it as, you know, I had to get through it because honestly, I'm a man, and so it just wasn't, you know, acceptable in our society. So I think that's my overview of, you know, the mental and how you have to have it, you know, truly strong.
You know, last year, Jalen, you did, and I appreciate the kind words. I love you to death. You know that, and I'll see you this week. The thing that you did so well last year was, you know, when you earned the starting role right out of the gate, and then you become player of the week, then 2 weeks later you struggled, and that was tough. I mean, that was kicking you in the shins, and you had to swallow some pride to go to South Florida and to stand on that sidelines. But you earned the team back in that moment. And you needed a little attitude check there, but you grew from that. And I think a lot of guys and kids don't understand what those teaching moments are. What was the biggest thing you learned in that game?
So number one, I saw football in different lenses. Being off of the sideline, you learn so much. Being off the field. But what I took personally, how strong I am as a person, and I acknowledge that I'm mentally strong, because in a normal reality, that would break somebody down, being in that same position I was in, and they wouldn't be able to overcome that and lead a whole group of players to be, on the path to success that we end up having at the end of the season. And so I'll say that I learned a lot about myself. I learned, what it takes to be mentally strong. And I did, understand who you need to have in your circle to uplift you in your journey, because that was, along the path of being a hard time. So it's all about like understanding, who I need to have in my circle, and reflecting on, what I needed to do to push forward, because I knew that wasn't end of my goals or into my journey. I truly believe that, just an obstacle that I had to face so that it can teach me about being mentally strong and being strong as a person. So I honestly wouldn't, change what happened. I feel as though it needed to happen in the sense of allowing myself to be mentally strong and just learning more about myself.
For a lot of people, Jalen, the ultimate symbol of strength is their father. And you mentioned the military background, and I've had an opportunity to talk to your father before. Great family, by the way. But how difficult was it to tell him, I'm not okay? And then when you told him that, because it was so out of the norm, he comes to Tuscaloosa and spends an entire week with you. What did that week do for you personally?
So personally, what it did for me, so at the time, I lived by myself. And as a player, I would leave the facility and I go home to my own thoughts. So it was actually a study. Most of the thoughts that we have in our head throughout our day are negative thoughts. So you're going home to, of course, you have the hardship during the day, but then you go home to just. So I believe this. So like, the more you pour water into a bottle, it's gonna fill up at some point, and it's gonna overflow. That's how I feel our emotions are, in a sense of, you might not blow up today, but tomorrow you might blow up on somebody because you didn't talk about it, and just take your hair down in the sense of this situation. So I thought it was a great opportunity for just me and my pops to build our relationship, number one. But then I was able to talk to him, and what my dad did a really good job at was he was quick to listen, less to talk. And just allow me to just talk, what I'm saying, and just really like be someone I can just talk to, and just, of course I trust him and love him to death. So like, I didn't lack any of that. It was just an opportunity just for me to just speak about it. So I think that was truly what I took away from having that time with my dad, and it just made me just appreciate him even more.
What do you feel going into this year? Because, last year you were fighting for your job. You're still fighting for your job every day. I know that, and I know what the right word is. But you have a new coaching staff that building a lot around you. How do you feel going into this, and how do you look to manage that going into this season?
Confident. I'm very confident. I trust in our coaching staff. They're very confident in me. They don't lack any trust in me. They're all in on me. So you play a little differently. You feel more confident as a player when you have a whole army behind you that'll back you up in any instance, that we'll go through. So, that's number one. Number two, that I'm just happy to see the development of our whole team as a whole, with each room, beyond offense, even defense, special teams, everyone just collectively just coming together to accomplish one task, which is being successful in all that we do. I think what we try to do is separate the offseason to 4 stages, which is fourth quarter, spring ball, summer 1, then summer 2. Then now transitioning the season. As cliche as it is, it's all about trusting the process. We're going to want to know each and every day. We season every opportunity that we have together. So I'll say, I feel very confident, with the guys that's here, and just, ready to put on display all the hard work we've been doing in the dark.
Is there one thing that you're doing for your mental health this year that you learned from last year? I mean, is there one place that you go? Is there one thing you do? I know you like to get in the facility early and have your time. What is the one reconnection time that you have?
So, I'll say no one's harder on myself. No one's harder on me than myself. So, I think it's common as players, all we think about the negative, when it comes to mistakes and what we're not doing. But I transition my mind to think of the strengths and what I've been doing right. And so I always try to reflect and think of some things I'm doing positively and end on that. Of course, during your day, like I mentioned, that most of the thoughts that you have are negative thoughts. I try to change that by looking at positive things and just having, of course, as a coach, their job is to critique the man out of the players. And, as a player, of course, you try to, receive and be a sponge for all information, but also, balancing that and also balancing your strengths and understanding, what makes you special.
So, Jalen, we know you're busy. We're going to let you bounce here, but I did want to say this because I told you in Dallas when you agreed to come on after I had read your story. Cannot overstate how important and powerful your words are and your testimonial, especially for kids 14, 15, 16, 20 years old that look up to you, because this is atypical for a starting quarterback in the SEC at your age to come out and to share like this. And I think it's ultra powerful. Cannot thank you enough. And I guarantee you, you might not know how many people this is going to affect in a really positive way.
I appreciate you. I think the biggest thing that I try to be is just to be a blessing to other people in society and shine my light on them. And so whoever, my testimony is able to touch, that's what it's all about. And I just believe that, through every struggle, any adversity that anybody goes through, there's a way out of it. And so you just have to learn that and understand and be around people that can uplift you, push you along your journey. So I appreciate y'all just letting me talk about it.
Yeah, good luck, stay healthy, and we will be in touch with you.
I'll see you Thursday. I'll see you tomorrow, man.
All right, see you later. All right.
See ya.
That is the one and only Jalen Milroe, Alabama starting quarterback. And I do think, and you helped me out
awesome.
here, like I was embarrassed to even admit it as a 50-year-old man, and you've got you get embarrassed by so much the younger you are.
Yes.
And for him to be able to come out and to share that story.
It was hard.
I'm sure. Can't even imagine.
There was a period last year when, and I will say this about Jalen. There was one thing. His freshman year, I gave a talk in front of the thing, and he was the first player that came down and said, "Hey, can I set up an appointment with you? I just want to get better." That whole culture of that team is like that now because of the leadership of what he's done. And there's no shame. And look, I'm going to tell you, when you're the starting quarterback and you get benched, you're running 4 in practice. You're not getting any reps. You're standing there with your helmet behind your back talking to a GA, and that's what happened going into the USF game. But we had to have a little attitude adjustment on Wednesday. Okay, I'm not afraid he'll tell you that. I told him, I said, get your head out your ass and go be a man and be the leader that you are in this team. He went out to practice. He was dabbing people up. The team responded because they knew he was the leader. He wasn't fake. And see, that's what Jalen is. He's vulnerable. He's authentic, but he's also passionate. And so you were asking earlier about what it is about where we find happiness. It's about being our true self and having value in who we are. That's what Jalen has done. Now, it's awesome story when it validates it, when life validates it.
Yeah, and I'll end the episode on this. We started with shame, and, from the moment I started to actually verbalize what I had gone through, that went away from me.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of people I've talked to have said once they've reached out and they've gotten help, the shame has gone away. So wherever you're listening to us, very, very important. You start the conversation. 988 is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Kick Anxiety's Ass. It's a great book. BhrettMcCabe.com.
Yep.
You make sure you check out that website. Send us DMs, any questions, comments you've got, but like and subscribe. Men's Mental Health Pod, Episode 8. Special thanks to Jalen Milroe.
Thank you, my man.